Minecraft worlds are really expansive. From the tops of a mountain range to the deepest dark, you need to be able to get around efficiently. Luckily, Minecraft has numerous forms of movement, and they can all be applied in different ways to the terrain around you. Say you're trying to reach this mountain peak to get a good vantage point. You need to travel almost directly upwards to reach your goal. Minecraft provides both early and late game solutions to this problem, like a water bucket compared to a riptide trident. Depending on what you have, you should use different methods. That's what this video is about, going over the 3 cardinal dimensions of movement and how each of them can be applied to master every biome in a Minecraft world. Whether you're a brand new player or a seasoned vet, hopefully you can find something to learn from this video. Let's get right into it. First things first, we need to cover the basics of moving around the Minecraft world. I've broken down the necessary forms of movement into 3 cardinal dimensions. These are horizontal, upwards, and downwards. For the purposes of this video, I've decided to remove the elytra from consideration, since it pretty much removes the need for 80% of these tactics. Every movement you make fits into one of these categories, and you'll need to be able to apply all of them if you want to be able to master every biome. Some biomes require more upwards, some require horizontal, and some require downwards movement. Let's start by learning horizontal movement. This is the most diverse category, since it covers all directions and can be aided by mountable mobs. Walking is where this category's first steps lie, with an average speed of 4.3 blocks per second. Though it's the foundation, you should almost never be walking if your goal is to traverse terrain quickly. If you're forced to walk because of low hunger, walk diagonally, since it's actually around 0.1 blocks per second faster. Along the same lines, sneaking diagonally is actually much better than the normal alternative. With 1.83 blocks per second compared to 1.3, there's no reason not to move diagonally. This principle applies to bridging as well, and it's exactly why you should bridge diagonally instead of straight backwards. Obviously, speed bridging takes us to the next level, and it all just stacks on top of each other. Circling back to basic movement, we're all aware of the use of sprinting. It ends up being around 1.3 times faster than walking, and sprint jumping ends up being around 1.27 times faster than sprinting. To take this one step further, you actually travel about 0.4 blocks per second faster when sprint jumping up onto 1 block elevation. This can be done by either routing your path through the terrain to time your jumps, or more consistently by placing blocks underneath you to artificially create that elevation. The final boss of sprint jumping comes in the form of a head hitter. When done in an extended 2-block tunnel, you can reach speeds around 9.7 blocks per second. This seems like a pretty niche scenario, but you can easily create this artificially by placing blocks above your head. By using a strategic combination of elevated sprint jumps and artificial head hitters, you optimize how you navigate different terrain. Other notable forms of horizontal movement include horses, ice boating, normal boating, swimming, and dolphins grace swimming. Now on to the second dimension, upwards movement. The building block of moving upwards is the jump. The first block to add to that is placing a block underneath you during the jump. Doing this repeatedly is the most common way to go up, but although the strategy is super easy and consistent, it's not always the best. You can one-up this tactic by alternating placing a full block and a soul sand. Soul sand is 7/8 of a normal block, and jumping from soul sand to a normal block, which would be 1.125 blocks high, lets you land on the normal block faster than normal. This leads to you jumping sooner, which in turn leads to you going up faster. You can also use wind charges to stack up insanely fast, but this requires some fast clicking and practice. Wind charges on their own are super useful though, where you can use them either one at a time with a max of 12 blocks, or chain together to clear even higher heights. Another common way to go upwards is climbing, which can be done with ladders, vines, twisted vines, weeping vines, scaffolding, and glowberries at a speed of 2.35 blocks per second. Some of these can be useful in niche biomes and scenarios, but for the most part, climbing is used in controlled scenarios like at your base. Swimming is another common method, and before you think it can only be done in oceans, remember the portable ocean of the water bucket. By placing it above you on a wall or ceiling, you can swim up it and not have to use any blocks to do so. To best optimize swimming upwards, make sure you look straight up and hold jump. This applies to all bodies of water, and it's a good practice to learn. Let's say you're bridging using the methods we learned earlier, but you need to go up to a piece of land above you. You could just bridge straight and then pillar up, but the hypotenuse is always shorter than the sum of the sides, so going diagonally up to the land is the fastest route. This can be done by doing what's called one stacking. It involves shifting and unshifting while jumping and placing blocks to bridge upwards at a 45-degree angle. The timing boils down to shifting to the edge of the block, jumping and quickly releasing shift, placing blocks during all of this and repeating the process at a consistent rate. It takes practice to develop consistent timing, but it ends up being more efficient than bridging and stacking separately. Other upwards movements include ender pearls, which can be boosted by using wind charges, and riptide tridents, which can be used anywhere by placing a water bucket, picking it up, and then quickly launching yourself before the water dries up. The final dimension is going downwards, and it's the most straightforward of all the dimensions. Moving downwards is 90% falling, so being able to do that safely is vital. The best top tier clutches I recommend are water buckets, powder snow, wind charges, scaffolding, and ender pearls. In the middle tier, I put chorus fruit, modern boats, mace hits, slime blocks, berry bushes, cobwebs, ladders, and twisted vines. In the bottom, least recommendable tier, I put horses and slow falling. This ranking is totally subjective and mainly based on practicality and ease of use. You'll very commonly have a water bucket, but you'll very rarely have a horse to land on, so that difference leads to the water bucket being much more advisable. There are much safer ways to go down though, such as riding a boat or purling to lower land. Thinking back to water mechanics, there's actually a way to speed up the process of swimming down. Much like holding jump in water makes you rise faster, holding crouch makes you sink faster. Now that we've covered the cardinal dimensions of movement and how to best navigate them, we can now cover the major biomes in a Minecraft world. Let's hit these one by one, and let's start with the biome from the intro, the mountains. There are multiple different mountain biome types in Minecraft, but the fact of the matter remains the same for all of them. You need to be able to get over them efficiently. This can take some horizontal movement, but mainly what you'll need is upward movement. Stacking up the mountain face is the most common approach, but I'd recommend using either wind charges, the riptide water bucket combo, or just a simple ender pearl throw to the peak. Just be ready for the pearl to land by looking down and at an angle to place blocks, so that if the pearl lands on a wall, you can clutch on it. Forests. Plenty of horizontal movement here, and you can really utilize the trees to do head hitters. You can extend the trees out with blocks like this to get an even larger runway. Besides that, try to scout out a path to run that takes you under taller trees rather than shorter ones. Groves and slopes. These biomes are like a mix of mountains and meadows, but every so often the ground will be made of powder snow. The number one counter against powder snow is wearing leather boots, but since they can be a hassle to carry with you, I usually skip them. I'd recommend placing blocks underneath you while you run to both move quickly and avoid falling into the powder. But if you do fall in, bring a water bucket so you can quickly erase the powder you're trapped in. Swamps. These are almost 100% horizontal movement, and the plan to get through them is pretty straightforward. Try to avoid water as best as you can, since trying to use something like a boat will get annoying quickly due to lily pads. If you can, place blocks under you while running to stay out of the shallow water. If we're talking about mangrove swamps specifically, try to stay on top of the trees. Traveling at water level is always a pain. Rivers. Utilizing the water is key in rivers, since the edges are usually hard to traverse, especially if the river is in a valley. Boats travel at 8 blocks per second and take no hunger to use, so it beats out sprint jumping that clocks in at 7.1 blocks per second. If you're in the colder biomes, rivers will commonly be frozen over, so ice boating will be your number one option. Plus, it's always a fun game to try and race along the river's shape. Oceans. Boats are my default recommendation for travel here, but that quickly changes if you spot a dolphin. Dolphin's grace clocks you at 9.8 blocks per second, 1.8 blocks per second faster than a boat, so swimming with them is much better. You can actually take this one step further by having depth strider on your boots and leading the dolphin. This gets you going at supersonic speeds. A cool trick I've learned while riding a boat or swimming in oceans is that you can line up your camera in third person with the water level to get a good view of what's underneath. This is great for searching for structures like shipwrecks. The Riptide Trident Elytra combo is always fun in oceans, and in future updates, riding a Nautilus will also be an option. Underwater caves. Now that we're transitioning over to the underbelly of the Minecraft world, let's start it off with the waterlogged caves. These are great for finding ores like diamonds, since they generate more frequently when not exposed to air, such as in a water cave. The main problem here is having enough air, but you can bring your own through either doors, pressure plates, beds, magma blocks, spamming your bucket, water breathing pots, or the Nautilus in future updates. Dripstone. Avoid landing on the spikes. That should go without saying. Don't trust every water block you see either, since sometimes it can be a waterlogged spike that will kill you on impact. Other than that, it's useful to know you can climb up the sides of some of the big spikes. Lush caves. These are one of the only sources of moss in an entire Minecraft world, along with shipwrecks, trial chambers, and wandering traders. They're also super great for getting water underground, since sometimes it can be hard to find a lone water source in noodle caves. Deep dark. The final boss of cave biomes, this is where a lot of problems can arise. The best way to move around this place is to do sprint jump sneaking, which is done by sprint jumping and then hitting crouch in the air before you land. You'll be hopping around like this, but sensors and wardens can't hear you when you do this. Placing wool over the shriekers like this is best, rather than over any sensors. Also, Skulk can be insta-mined with an iron hoe or better, and since it drops XP, it can be great for gaining that. For reference, it takes 107 Skulked mine to go from level 29 to 30. Nether wastes. Moving on to the Nether, there's one important rule of thumb. The high ground is always better. There could be horizontal, upwards, and downwards movements in pretty much every biome in the Nether. This leads to it being one of the most dangerous and trickiest places to travel. You'll have to use plenty of bridging strats like one stacking, horizontal strats like head hitters and block elevation, and downward strats like riding a boat. Always be on the lookout for openings, since these will be your best bet for moving efficiently. Soul Sand Valley. Mainly horizontal movement here, so placing blocks under you to avoid soul sand is a great move. Try to avoid running near skeletons, but if you have to, strafe while you run at them to try and avoid taking hits. If you run into a ghast, dealing with them is usually better than not. You can either bring a bow to shoot them, hit their fireballs back at them, or lower your render distance to unrender them. Crimson Forest. Also a lot of horizontal movement here, so doing head hitters while on the ground and block extensions while in the trees is best. Avoid hoglins at all costs, but bring a lava bucket to plop on them if you have to run by them. Gold armor is also recommended to take piglins out of the equation. Warped Forest. This is probably the safest Nether biome as long as you don't look at Enderman. It's common practice to look around 20 degrees down and use third person to ensure you don't look any in the eye. Warped Forests also have twisted vines all over the place, so you can use those for super quick downwards movement. Basalt Deltas. Definitely the worst terrain in the Nether. These biomes require every dimension of movement. Try to avoid magma cubes altogether, but if you have to engage, try to hit it off a ledge or a cliff. Never let them corner you. Most of the lava in this biome is shallow, so stacking while sprint jumping is usually enough to avoid taking a dip. It's also important to note that bastions can't generate in basalt deltas, so you'll only find nether fortresses here. The outer end. On to the final biome of this video. The outer end is all horizontal movement until you reach the end cities, where it becomes mostly up and down. You can trap endermen in boats and kill them for pearls, bring extra blocks and mine endstone to bridge diagonally across the gaps, and bring firework rockets for when you get an elytra to make an efficient escape. When in an end city, a water bucket is your best friend. You can use them to climb walls, drop down, avoid floating from levitation, and move shulkers by giving them a quick dunk. When making your escape, you have to search for an end gateway. They emit a magenta beacon for 10 seconds once generated, so looking out for that and the light they emit is how you find them. Although I didn't cover every biome in Minecraft, by using the cardinal dimensions of movement and the tactics I talked about earlier, you should be able to master any biome you come across. Having overall better movement just makes Minecraft that much more fun, so I encourage you to enjoy the process of learning. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments, and if you want to learn about unique speedrunning tricks that no one talks about, click this video right here. Thanks for watching.